Everyone, welcome to this talk.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, yep, got it. Awesome. So just in case everyone didn't hear, it's being recorded. But yeah, welcome to the talk. Today, we're obviously going to be talking about how to kind of break into design and just generally designing for the metaverse. I have two really good friends here today who are also just really great leaders in the field. And I'm so excited to moderate the discussion with them today. So thanks everyone for coming. Yay! I'll get my intro out of the way and then we can go into talking about Zoe and Lois. A little bit about me is I'm currently a UX designer at Google working on Chrome. I also went to CMU, did design with Sohi, and have worked on many projects with Lois as well. I've worked on some AR, VR projects, created art in AR, but and kind of deep in the Web3 space. But just like you, I'm really curious to hear Sohi and Lois's perspective. So Lois and Sohi, would you care to share a little bit more about yourselves?
Totally.
A little intro, yep.
So my name is Sohi. I'm the head of XR for a startup called Encore. Our company is based off of creating live interactive music performances, live streams so that fans and artists can get closer together and connect through AR experiences, as well as more of like a gamified way to interact with your favorite artists. So right now, my job primarily is focused on designing augmented reality sets for people to perform in. The app is live and available for people to try and build your own sets in and perform in. Right now, it's still pretty fresh. And so feel free to bring feedback or anything if you're testing the app. But, I did design with Susan as well. I came from an industrial design background at Carnegie Mellon. And through a lot of different new decisions, went from ID to an ID master's, to an MBA, to augmented reality. And so it's been quite the journey, but super excited to talk about it for all the people out there who might be in different industries looking forward to going into the metaverse.
Awesome, thanks, Zoe. Lois?
Hi, everyone. My name is Lois. I am a product designer at Meta, currently at the Reality Labs, and I'm working on smart glasses. I graduated from CMU Information Systems and Human Computer Interactions program back in 2017, I think. And I've been doing mobile design for the longest time. I've been doing it since school for every side project and basically for the last 8 years, I think. And I made the switch to design for AR, VR at the end of last year. It was super fun, very intense, and I'm learning so much about hardware, all the different technologies, and talking to different fields. And thinking about packaging and connectivity, those unthought of areas for mobile. It's been super fun. And when I was searching for AR applications, I think I saw Encore, and I messaged Susan. I'm like, hey, do you know the creator of Encore? Can you give me an invite code? And that's actually how I heard about Sohi. So that was a super interesting way to meet other CMUers through random accidental discovery.
That's incredible. Yeah, Lois had texted me one day and asked me about that. I was like, oh, Zoe works here. She's the head of XR. So I'm glad that was a fruitful connection. Super awesome to hear about both of your backgrounds. Now, I think what would be awesome is if we could hear from both of you what you guys think the state of the metaverse is at right now. There are so many different definitions of the metaverse. Even both of you are working in such different areas of the metaverse. So there's different perspectives to it. What is your guys' opinion on the state of the metaverse now compared to, 3 years, 5, even a year ago, and in your respective fields as well? Why don't we start with Lois this time?
Sure. I actually think a lot of unfortunate events that happened in the past 2 years accelerated the needs for a metaverse. I know this is very controversial, but hear me about it. like, I think the intensity of all the climate changes, it's very clear that it's unsustainable for us to always like travel for business. Like, I think people should travel for leisure more, like after COVID, but like sometimes when you are like just trying to figure a project out, trying to like travel for business, it adds a lot of like carbon footprints to the already accelerated climate changes. And because of COVID, a lot of people are feeling like lonely or feeling anxiety, wants to reach out, but it's hard because people are far away. Even your closest friend might not be in the same city, let alone like same neighborhood. So it's like hard for you to connect, reach out and ask for help. I think all these isolation and loneliness made a lot of cases for a more connected internet. So I think in general, we need an easier and sustainable and fun way to communicate and connect, whether it's AR, VR, mixed reality. I think all the tech companies realize that, and they are trying to build a better future by connecting all these different type of realities. So I think it's trending. Yes, there are of course, there are a lot of problems that we need to like solve, like privacy, and a lot of, mental health when we're building for the metaverse. But I think in general, the hopes and dreams are for a better future with less carbon footprints and to solve the isolation and loneliness problems. So I'm very hopeful, and I think we are at a better state than 2 years ago. Yeah, that's my
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Lois. Sohi, what about you? What is the state of the metaverse as from your perspective and compared to maybe a few years ago? Where are we at now?
For sure. I think, the term, the metaverse, is very much like a hot-button term. It's something used for the hype cycle. I very firmly believe in that. I'm also 100% going to use it for the hype cycle because I want people to know about it and I want people to be excited about it. I think the concept of the metaverse has been around for a really long time. It's not necessarily a new thing, but right now, because it is attached to the idea of corporation, obviously metaverse and meta seem interchangeable. There's mixed messaging about what exactly the metaverse is. So if you ask some people, they will say metaverse is only fully virtual immersed environments. I happen to be in the camp of not thinking that as an augmented reality company employee, because I feel that what the metaverse really means is a reflection of your digital imagination, right? And so any moment or any not realistic world, not fully realistic world, is an entrance into the metaverse, and how much you want to escape through the levels of digital environment is really up to you. I also personally feel that every digital footprint we've ever created, from being on social media, from feeding to algorithms, from shopping, from any of that kind of stuff, is considered part of your metaverse. A great example that I'd like to mention is, if we were not here on the earth tomorrow, and you were to collect all this digital data, and I were to recreate it, create this avatar, create this environment that's fully for you, how close to your real self would that be? And is that the metaverse or the world that you want to represent yourself, right? And so I think, working in the creative field, the entertainment industry, it's like a whole different version of the metaverse, because it's not asking people to be realistic. It's saying, this is a place where you can be ultimately creatively free to the nth degree. You can have floating heads, you could have melting pictures of, soda cans and whatever. And all those are valid because they're about expression, they're about storytelling, they're about asking people to enter this like imaginative, creative space in your mind, not just a replica of what you already have and what you've already purchased and how you already live, right? People like to joke about, really rich individuals buying expensive lands in like Decentraland. And they're like, why are you spending all this money buying a fake mansion in a digital world when you have a real mansion to, you know, sit by the pool at? And I think those are the points of contention of, you know, why is the metaverse useful? What can the metaverse bring? What can digital freedom really provide? So we're not just creating these mountains of digital trash. We're being really mindful of how we are creating this new era. And so I think the state of metaverse right now is in every which way, and it's up to us as individuals and people who want to create for it to establish what we feel is right.
Awesome. Those are really, really in-depth and good answers, speaking from various kind of perspectives. So thank you for that. And so, you know, today we're going to get into the nitty gritty and the meaty stuff about how designers can, you know, be in the metaverse and all that stuff like that. But before we get into the good stuff, can you guys give a quick kind of overview of like, what does design for the metaverse mean to you guys?
Design for the metaverse.
Let's start with you. Yep.
Okay. I think a part of me still has my industrial design brain, which is like, what is the usable part about digital goods and the digital metaverse? Where is the practicality and how can this medium have longevity? I am invested in emerging technologies. I'm invested in AR, VR. And so I desperately want it to work and to be around and to be cool and be good. And so if I put my design ID brain on, it's like, how do we find an actual use case? How do we not make this a part of the hype cycle? How can we not use it to replace things that are real and good, but just make it an addition to what we already have, you know, an elevated experience, I think. And so for me, designing the metaverse is not just looking at environments, but individual experiences with a digital item, right? I think the metaverse is created off game designers and environmental designers. And what usually happens is they're really amazing storytellers and they bring you through a world. But what industrial designers and product designers and UX designers, what they're also really good at is looking at hand-to-hand combat. If I need to interact with one specific thing in the metaverse, how can this be useful? How can this be beautiful? How can this be worthwhile, you know? And I think that's why so many different people of like different design backgrounds, having them enter this space will develop a more enriching metaverse and a more useful one.
Awesome. Lois?
Yeah. I think to me, this question will be very long. My answer will be very long because I would really just reference back to like when like the pre-computer age era. And at that time, people basically live in the physical world. The only way you connect with people is to visit them in person. And with the introduction of personal computers, and later on, we have smartphones and like wearables. It brings a different layer, which is a 2D digital world where your closest one is in one tap away. Like you can reach out to them through any type of like messaging platform. And that was like a second era. And now we are entering to a third layer, which we add a virtual layer on top of the physical and the 2D digital world. We have like another layer and they will all coexist. Like none of them will be diminished. It's just like we're all coexisting. We're adding a different layer of you to represent yourself, show your expression, show your creativity.
Yeah.
And I think Metaverse opens up this like whole new world in terms of like how the future of all the like how we work, how we relax, how we hang out with each other. And because of that, that's like the context, right? And then because of that, there's so many different layers that you can work on in the metaverse. And designing for that is going to be super fun. I think step one is like, we are going to design how we design for the metaverse. And second one is like, there are a lot of like different structures inside the metaverse. You can be a VR designer. You can work on the VR headset. You can work on VR games, VR worlds, 3D art. If you're an AR designer, you can work on the AR headsets, AR applications, whether it's on a smartphone or any other devices. You can also work on AR, effects. And I think if you are like an industrial designer, like Sohi's background, you can work on like all these like different hardwares, and also think about like how the real life architecture can be brought back to this like 3D virtual world. Yeah, and I think recently I had a very interesting conversation with someone who is not a designer at all. Like, I think he studied psychology and how government functions in the States. And then he was thinking about like how to design like the DAO structure. Granted, it's like a completely different concept, but because of the everything is fresh and new and undefined, I think every type of job and past experiences are welcome to this new era of technology, and we can all design our way and design how we design for the metaverse.
Yeah, there are so many different kind of aspects of design that we can bring into the metaverse and make sure we find good kind of homes and places for them and apply those skills. And speaking of that kind of like Web 2 to Web 3, or like virtual versus like real life design, how, and you guys have both worked in Web 2 companies and like just, that kind of stage companies before and projects. How have you both kind of adjusted, or did you need to adjust? What kind of skills are you kind of acquiring or bringing into designing for yourselves? Sohi?
I think with my job in particular, there is a lot of concern about, self-expression and what happens when you're signed to a label. So we work with a lot of hip hop artists, and when you're signed to a label, your self-expression is kind of owned by that, and how you perform and when you perform and how long you perform, how many songs you perform, which songs you perform, become more and more controlled by another entity, right? And so designing in these augmented reality sets, trying to create a democratized application so that people can create in digital worlds and for the metaverse themselves, and not be limited by software and by companies and by labels and all that kind of stuff, and encouraging people to be more independent with their work through independent labels, or just playing with digital expression today and performing live. I think my realization is how important it is to own and make your own stuff, and how important it is to be true and authentic to your voice. Music artists and designers and all types of artists, I'm sure, struggle with creating for others versus creating something that is true to yourself. And I think in this new era, we're hoping to preserve that authenticity of what does it mean to own things, and to create things not for like a cash payout, or not for a lot of attention, or not for an audience or a community, but really to stay true to your creative voice. I think I'm realizing that a lot because, I'm working for artists now instead of just like Encore the entity, and wanting to encourage that vision, I think will be really vital as we move into this concept of Web3 and, digital freedom and digital ownership. And you can already feel the pressure of wanting to productize, wanting to make cash grabs, wanting to start businesses, wanting to, create volume and follow in the steps of others to create volume. And so I think we're on like the precipice of having to make this decision. And I just hope that, everyone on this call and us as individuals will make the right ones.
I love what Sohi just mentioned, because I think Metaverse is really embracing the creator economy concept. Like before, I feel like individuals are not really like given the tools to freely express themselves, or like just make art that people can own and can express their love to. So I think what I really find interesting when I switched from mobile design to the metaverse is like you have to be extremely creative, because this is like this is such like a new world, and sometimes the best way to create is through some visual artifacts. Right now there are so many toolkits if you want to like create mobile screens. However, if you want to tell story in the metaverse, the tools are not there yet. We don't have like a Figma that matches to what you need for the metaverse. So you're kind of like just experimenting with different tools every day. I'm trying to figure out what's the best way for you to sell your idea, tell a story, and get everyone aligned. Yeah, and I think that it's actually pretty fun, but sometimes you will be like a little bit overwhelmed with the different type of things that you need to try every day. And I think that also leads to the second point, which is you need to be able to thrive in ambiguity. Sometimes there's no one who's going to tell you this is what the guidelines are. Here's a framework. Here you go. You kind of have to what's the word, like build the bridge while like crossing the river or something.
Like Indiana
So
Jones or something.
yeah. And I think sometimes I find a lot of very successful designers, they're very good at like they're pretty good at solid on like basically everything. Like they're good at like telling a story, they're good at like bringing people along, communicate, but then there will always be like one thing they're just an expert on. And I think that's the T zone that we're always like referring to. I think a lot, it's the same thing, whether you're designing for the 2D digital world or like a completely different type of canvas.
That's really interesting. Yeah, it sounds like, today we have so many tools just because we've been in this state for almost 2 decades. So, well, not 2 decades, but quite a while. So we have tools to work with already. So you guys are having to find all these new tools, learn these new tools, and I'm sure they're not the best tools yet, right? So having to create all these new creative ways to solve your problems sounds very challenging. So my next question is, how can designers know if they could be a good fit for designing in the metaverse? Let's say I am interested in it. Like, how would I know if I'd be a good fit, and what can I do to kind of figure that out? Anyone who wants to go first?
I feel like what Lois just mentioned about ambiguity is really important. If it's about any kind of new tech, honestly, like if you feel like you would thrive in like open waters, not exactly having really clear directions of what it is, and you like zooming back in and out from really detailed design and also the big picture of what you hope to see in the next 5 to 10 years. Any background is good for the metaverse. There's a place for everyone. There isn't one background that fits more than the other. It's just what part of it you want to design, right? The world is the world. There's room for everybody. I would say, thinking back, I felt like I needed to have all these really intense skills, whether that's 3D modeling, whether that's Unity, whether that's C#, whether that's, whatever. There's like a million different options nowadays. But I think everything starts with an idea. I used to be interested in a topic called design fictions or speculative design. I'm sure a lot of CMU designers will like understand that topic. And it's really using design as a form of rhetoric and projecting what you think the future will be. But I think the best lesson I learned was interviewing for a HoloLens internship at Microsoft. And the person was like, when you work for a company, instead of just thinking about what you think the world should be, you need to think about what you want the world to be in 5 years, and then trace back to what you need to do today to get a little bit closer to that future, right? And so it's not always being heady and lofty. And so for everyone who wants to be a part of the metaverse, don't get too caught up about this like utopian future or this dystopian future of what the metaverse will be. It's what part do you want to contribute to, and what do you have to learn, and what do you have to make today to help bring that a little bit closer.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I think if I have to just name one, it's being curious. The fact that like people are calling into this call or like watching this video later, I think it means like you are probably curious about this field, and just keep doing that. Keep attending to more events, maybe watching a YouTube video about how other people interpret designing for metaverse. And here, I actually encourage everyone to hear different opinions and form your own opinions. You don't have to like believe in anything that we say, but like the more you hear, the more you can try to like critically think about all these words and try to piece all of them together for yourself. I think that would be like the best, because like having your opinion, own it, and build a product around it will be super impactful. And I also think like, if you're curious enough, please try out some of those applications out there that's designed for the metaverse, whether check out some of the Decentraland, download Encore, or buy a Oculus Quest. Just try them out. Like sometimes it's very hard to design for something if you don't even know what it is. Like have the first-hand experience on these devices or apps. It will really help you form your opinions.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. Lois still has to play a game with me on Oculus, which we're gonna do very soon, but I agree, it's very easy to kind of get intimidated by it before you actually kind of get into it and be like, oh, these are the interactions. I'm used to this. I did this in another game or in another world before, and kind of like be involved in that way. And coming up on kind of the last two questions, but you know, I think one that we're all curious to hear about is to hear about how you guys got into the designing in the metaverse, because as we know, you didn't start there. So how did that happen for you?
As I said before, I started out in industrial design, and I was like super intense about doing nothing but that. And what that landed me was a job designing medical tools and industrial tools. And so I was designing like surgical tools and medical carts, and I was like, oh my gosh, as impactful as this is, I cannot do this. And so I decided to go back to grad school, and actually originally was going to this program called Media Design Practices at Art Center here in Pasadena. And I was really excited about doing experimental things. And for them, the program changes every year dependent on like what technologies and what kind of topics are the most relevant in that year. And so augmented reality and virtual reality was that year's topic. And I'm sure they still teach it because it's consistently relevant. And I realized that I fell in love with this medium. A lot of people don't like sitting in like a completely enclosed space because they might feel disoriented or they feel uncomfortable. But I realized for me, it was like a second extension of being imaginative and being creative, that it felt really freeing. And then I switched out of that program because it was mostly writing. It was a lot of experimental writing and using design to talk about like the issues in the world, and very much a design ethics sort of program. And I went back into industrial design, believe it or not, and almost was about to do work on the actual physical headset. But ended up focusing on like digital fashion and experimental like digital camouflage. Those are topics that I was really interested in, and ended up going to the HoloLens team doing modern mixed reality for the modern workplace. And so did that for a summer and realized like that was it, and wanted to do AR and VR all the time. And actually was originally going to go to Facebook as an intern post school, but then got an offer to work on this new budding idea and really was excited about, you know, starting something from scratch. I was like number 4 for this company. We started with a pitch deck. I signed on to a company that only had a 10-slide pitch deck. And so I really just took the leap. And now we have an office and we have artists come in, we have performers, we have 2 developed apps, we have augmented reality designers and developers. And it's just wonderful how, you know, a year can really change a lot. And I went from being adamant that industrial design was for me to using that to leverage this new environment and world. And so a couple lucky breaks, but also just always being excited to learn about the next new thing, and then folding it back to my, you know, passions.
I just have to say, I'm so sad that Meta didn't get to. We could probably be co-workers and working on the same thing. Yeah. So for me, honestly, the company rebrand did not impact me that much. You know, like from Facebook to Meta, it didn't really like impact me. What really influenced me was when I was just hanging out with a friend, and then he was mentioning that he couldn't survive COVID if he didn't have like his Oculus. And the reason is because like everyone is feeling isolated and lonely. And he used like VR chat to hang out with people and reach out for people. So that was the first time I'm like, oh my God, this thing has real world impact. And I've only heard like bad things about some of, you know, like, you know, people put a lot of scrutiny on everything that we do. And I think it's for the good reason. And then this was like the first time I hear people were saying this actually helped me a lot on my like mental health, and thank you for doing that. So I was really influenced by that. And therefore I tried Oculus for the first time in December. And honestly, even though I was very reluctant to like set up the device, once I started it, I can't stop playing it. It was so fun. And like it's like my home gym, and I'm like hanging out with people over it. So knowing nothing about what and how I can design for AR VR, I jumped in. I asked my manager and did the team switch. And honestly, coming from the Facebook app, I was a little bit scared. I'm like, I don't know how to do this. It's like a very different type of job. But knowing who I am, knowing someone like I'm always like curious, and I want to be challenged and pushed creatively. So I would say the past like 4 months has been incredibly fun. I feel like it's a space where you can learn, read, write, and synthesize all the ambiguity a lot without feeling tired. And now I really think I can go back to mobile design.
Yeah, just, you know, being friends with Lois and Sohi, they're probably some of the most curious people out there, but I can also see it in their work. Like they're so excited about their work, and they're so excited to share what they're working on. And it's like seriously awesome to see. And all right, coming up on the last question. For designers, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but for designers who really want to get into the space, like, do you guys have any tips on like portfolios that they should focus on, or studies that they should read, you know, educational materials, communities they can join? Like any guidance on that would be really helpful.
I think that, you know, depending on what part of design, you know, like if you're doing UX UI or something for augmented reality. I'm not quite as sure. Maybe Lois can talk a little bit more about that. But in terms of like, for me, we're always looking for people who are super forward thinking, but also like technical artists. And so having some kind of understanding of creating design assets. A lot of game industry creators are also have a very specific aesthetic. And, and I think the thing that I wish is like all these different types of artists bring their aesthetics from their own mediums into this platform, into this medium, because, we could really use a refresh in variety. I'm sure everyone is really used to right now seeing these like hyper design CGI environments that are representing what virtual realities are. And so I'd love to see style, everyone's different styles, everyone's different tastes brought into that. And so my advice for people is to just figure out what kind of apps, whether that's, I'm really big on Spark AR, I think, because it's super easy. Yeah, and I see Filter Factory, so I'm sure he's making filters. It's like a really great way, Spark AR, Lens Studios, and then whatever the TikTok one is. I think that one requires way more verification, but it's just a super easy way to even just get started and to make things that are fun. I think, with new technology, it's so painful to learn something that isn't fun. And the outcome of filters is so gratifying, right? And that can ultimately turn into a business really quickly, whether that's, working for a brand, showing off your own art, being promotional material. Like there isn't a way that can't become, a job. And then those become portfolio pieces because it shows that you're not only creative, but you understand how to use augmented reality in a way that is business oriented and business minded, and Spark AR happens to have this like amazing, the filter community is just extremely vast. And they have everyone from like traditional painters and photographers to extremely technical developers who help like lead and teach how to do the technical stuff to bring more traditional mediums to life. Obviously, I'll do an Encore plug is like, we're trying to create a democratized tool so that people can just test AR in general and start creating with the assets that we do have. Hopefully, eventually people can like create their own stuff, their specific assets. But I think it's getting into these non-technical entry points to create immediately. And you can start building by showing that you're experimental, you have an eye for three-dimensional space, because no matter what you do in AR, it's going to be some type of three-dimensional space. And that you understand that there's a difference between 2D tactility, intangible tactility, and 3D tactility, right? Like what kinds of visual and emotional feedback do you need from 3D in a 3D space? So those are definitely points to hit in a portfolio.
Yeah, I would like to just say like Spark AR is so easy to use. I downloaded a mobile version and honestly, it just feels like making a story with like some custom stickers, and then you like put some brushes, draw something, and you can publish that as like a AR filter. And for anyone who wants to try it out, please go download. It was like super easy. Because coming in, I thought it's going to be like very intense. I need to like kind of like learn cinema for 4D, but it's not. It's very easy. And I would say there's no rubric for portfolio. And of course, what I'm saying here is not representing the company. I'm just some like personal opinions. I think the skills are pretty transferable. If you're coming from the 2D design, starting from like maybe try out Spark AR and then later maybe create some pixelated like voxel. I think that's the program. You can create some pixelated 3D art, something really simple, and then maybe try out like Blender or C4D or any other type of programs. And of course, these are optional. It's not a must. But I think having some sort of like 3D art or 3D project can really show your interest and passion in this field. I also heard some of my friends who come from like ECE background, so they're not like trained as a designer, but They play with Arduino, they play with Raspberry Pi, and somebody was like an industrial designer, and he did some like 3D printing because the job market for the metaverse is going to be super diverse. It's not just about like product design, it's also like industrial design, electrical engineering, all these different things. So if you have interest in any of these, just try them out and put them as like a side project on your portfolio, because there are not many like I would say like metaverse companies out there. It's unlikely that everyone has those projects on their work portfolio, but I think having some side project really shows your passion and dedication to this area.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. We have the last 15 minutes and we're going to go through some of the questions that we put into this Sildo. Yeah. Okay. Let's pick. I'm going to skip the first question because it's less about, I think, the metaverse. So why don't we start with, have you invested into any, well, NFT projects? Well, that's also not super into the metaverse. So let me go find one that's more metaverse related. Do you think that, okay, here are some questions. Maybe you, Sohi and Lois, you guys can help me think of which one to answer. Do you think the metaverse is inclusive? How do you design with inclusivity in mind? That's one. Another one is, currently metaverse is focused on a younger generation. What are some ways it can be more inclusive and encompassing for benefit older generation as well? I think those are maybe a little bit similar. So maybe we can answer that like 2 in 1.
Yeah. I think those are super great questions. I think first off, I feel like with the tech industry, there's definitely a certain demographic that it leans toward. And because of that, you know, what the outcome is for a certain demographic, whether that's age related, race related, gender related. It would be untruthful to say that the metaverse is this utopia. It comes also from the gaming industry, which is notoriously known for not necessarily being the safest or most equality supporting place. And people have found that being in, you know, virtual games, there is some kind of similar animosity in that communication. And so in its current space, I don't think the metaverse is inclusive, but I don't think a lot of spaces are inclusive. I think it is our jobs to make sure that they become inclusive, right? I think the person suggesting age as a barrier is a totally valid point, right? People who are working for these types of companies are really banking on the fact that we have a bunch of iPad kids that are growing up who will like be so already familiar with using iPhones and iPads and all this kind of stuff that it feels like second nature. But what's really cool about things like virtual reality and augmented reality is it provides tools that when it's not just for the entertainment industry and it's not just for gaming and it's not just for chatting, it can be an extension to lift a certain group up. For example, I think I'll use this example that I think is really beautiful is I can't remember where the article is from, but in a virtual reality space, the discussion of being your truest and most authentic self. You know, there are spaces in the real world where you cannot be yourself, where it's not safe, where you're not included, where you're not welcome. There's an opportunity for you to look the way you want to look, dress the way you want to dress, be who you want to be in these new virtual worlds that can be extremely inclusive if we can create these like safety guardrails to make sure that, you know, the internet is not a safe place. And so figuring out what that safe place means. And also with age, how can we design better UX and better tools so that people of all different, tech backgrounds can get involved. I love the idea of, all these researchers and people looking at VR experiences for situations like dementia and being able to replay your memories and being able to explore different spaces. Or if you're an older generation, if you don't have the ability to travel, how can you connect with people that are close to you? All these things are really important and can become more inclusive, but we need more people to come in and design them, right? Unfortunately, this is, with every new tech, it's also kind of a money grab, right? And so corporations are going to be focused on how it can reach the most people now so that they can establish an infrastructure and an environment for people to make money. And then for the years to come, we can continue to invest in the metaverse. But we need designers and we need inclusive environments. We need different types of people to come in and be the champions of unique experiences and experiences that speak up for others, like today, right? And so let's not make the same mistakes of facial recognition apps and being on social media and creating all these digital standards. Let's be the first people to really make the metaverse a new age of inclusivity. So I'd say it's got to be all of us. And so I'm really excited for all of you to be here.
Yeah, I think to build a very inclusive product, the workforce needs to be inclusive. And what Sohi just mentioned, the metaverse concept is coming from some sci-fi movies or books or the gaming industry. And even when I'm sure Sohi has the same problem, just not many people are having the AR VR background. We need to be more welcoming people on board so that they can bring their diverse opinions to this. For people who didn't even play any game before, or our grandparents or parents, it's just hard for them to get on board to this new concept. So I think all the inputs messages need to be inclusive, need to be more natural, closer to life, actual physical world. And we need to invite more actual physics to the metaverse, walking in the metaverse needs to be the actual walking, or chatting will just be as real as chatting with your friends. And that would really help bridging some gaps. And this is actually top of mind for me. I think internally, every day at my job, I'm talking about these things and inviting more people for these type of discussions. So whoever asked this question, props to you.
Love that answer. I love one of these questions too. Since both of you are in kind of the AR space, as a designer, how do you navigate the slippery slope of virtual escapism and balancing that with being present in reality?
Oof. It's a good one.
Yeah, that is a good one. So I'll just speak on, my company for now, because we're talking about that all the time. What does it mean to create a concert that is fully immersive versus a music experience, a live music experience that has the person in this digital world mixed, right? And I think the fear of the metaverse is that it will replace everything about us. It'll replace what we look like. It'll replace how we talk. It'll replace, where we are, to the point where you don't even recognize yourself anymore, right? And so what I love about, augmented reality is there's still some capture of authenticity. There's still some capture of you. And so you can't necessarily escape you being you, which I think is, really beautiful in some way. And so for us in this music performance, I'm not taking away these artists that make an impact on your life away from you. I'm not throwing, Justin Bieber in an avatar where he's not even there, but, some stunt double is, in a mocap suit in the back. Creating this performance for you so that you can put him on your desk. It's seeing, Kid Cudi talking to you interacting with you, making it feel like he's on this intimate one-on-one performance and almost like a FaceTime performance with you, so that you can experience things for people who like can't be there, who can't afford the ticket, who don't have the opportunity to go to a venue and spend hundreds of dollars to sit at a nosebleed seat to see this miniature Kid Cudi like so far away. There are other ways to interact, and I think the metaverse is a good way of upping production value and making production value accessible while still creating like intimacy and authenticity. And so that is what I love about AR and as an industrial designer, I can't help but be like, I still love physical things. I still love the physical world. Don't take that away from me. It's just like a neat high five between the digital and physical world.
Super second
analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lois.
I actually chose AR over VR for the same reason, because I think VR is fully immersive. Well, there are some efforts that you're like doing mixed reality, but I think in current terms, VR is immersive. You're kind of separating the two worlds, but AR is adding a concurrent experience on top of your day-to-day and help you solve something that like your smartphones might not be able to solve. And I think it's not a replacement. We're thinking about better ways for you to interact with your life. For example, these days, if you're trying to drive in a city or in a suburb, some people might be like heads down on their phone when they're crossing the road. That's super dangerous. But with AR, we're thinking about like how might we design a better experience for people if they have to reply to a message while they're crossing a road. So it's like it's not really replacement, but a help to make your current experience better.
Love that. And then I think we have time for one last question. I'm seeing this a lot, and I'm curious on your guys' take too. How do you guys differentiate like Web3 and Metaverse? Because I think sometimes people like to conflate some of the concepts of like NFTs and stuff, and I think they are related, but can you guys kind of differentiate them in your mind?
To me, they're a little bit different. I think Web3 is describing this decentralized world where I guess the overlap is the creator economy. Web3 is about the decentralization, about the application softwares and how we design for the internet. Because Web 2 is mostly like big techs are doing all these amazing tasks or doing all these things for you. So Web 3 is about decentralization and allowing everyone to contribute. Metaverse is really about how you experience the world and how we have like the three different layers of how you interact with the world. So it's a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I think right now the metaverse is Web 2, right? Whether or not we want to admit it,
Yeah.
is, they're created by different companies. I don't think we can call the metaverse Web 3 when there's a company called Meta, right? Creating communities and infrastructures and movements and products and systems, right? And I don't necessarily think that like Web 2 is this horrible thing we need to get away from. I just think it's a different version of how we exist. I think there is a place for Web 3 and ownership and like, especially like digital freedom and decentralized environments. Absolutely, yes. But I think it is right now, at least, unrealistic to say that like Web 2 is over, Web 3 for life. We need some kind of entryway into this new framework. And so the metaverse is ultimately a digital environment, a digital space, right? And whether or not there's a company involved is not included into that definition.
Awesome. I think, okay, if we have one more question, if you guys answer it in 1 minute. I think, what are the biggest challenges facing kind of metaverse right now, but also what are you guys most hopeful for and excited about? Okay, 1 minute each.
Cool, I can start. I think the challenge is to onboard more people, a diverse set of audiences. It's not just about techies who live in Silicon Valley or who are living in coastal city. It's really about our parents, grandparents, our friends and family who can interact and communicate. What's the second question? Sorry.
What are you most hopeful for?
Oh, hopeful for. Actually, yeah, less carbon footprint, I think. I think metaverse can really help us not solve the climate change, but help reduce some of the current issues that we have.
That's a great answer. I don't know if I have that great of an answer. I think for me, the biggest challenge is definitely, and I've said this like a million times, so it's not as exciting, but is keeping, some authenticity into the social world. I think, with social media, especially, we already have this facade, and the metaverse is just the next level of that. And so how can we learn what we learned from social media and digital personas and strip away the bad and bring on the good? I think that's one of the biggest challenges. And then what I'm really excited for is like the ultimate freedom to create with endless boundaries. This is very reminiscent to, when people were starting to learn how to code, open source libraries, communities, like everyone here and everyone outside of here, I think in this particular industry is super excited to teach and learn, and we're learning together. And so this is really, really exciting to build this infrastructure and this new medium together.
Yay, awesome. And we did it right on time, 6 p.m. Thank you guys so much for your amazing answers. And thank you everyone in the audience who asked questions. Yeah, and I think we can wrap up. I hope everyone learned something today. I know I did. Thank you, Sohi and Lois, so much for sharing all your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you guys for being here so we didn't have to talk to an empty Zoom.
All right, I guess see you all in the metaverse.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Max.
Bye.
Bye, Max.